Our United States stretches from Alaska to Texas, the Virgin Islands to Hawaii, and we as Americans have the unique liberty to roam freely in this country, larger in size than all Western European countries combined. It's easy for someone to get out of touch with relatives and friends in a country of this size. This video is produced because of the overwhelming response received due to television shows featuring cases in which regular, everyday people were able to find loved ones by simply searching public records. The viewer will be able to access a myriad of public records with the aplomb and dexterity of an experienced investigator. In this video, you'll find the address of a company that investigators and governments have used for years to run Social Security numbers, death files, and telephone numbers. If you wish, ask about purchasing the book version of You Too Can Find Anybody and other books by Joe Culligan. You may be able to locate your subject by simply contacting motor vehicle departments. The best hit rate will be for males, since they don't change their name as often as females do. Motor vehicle departments maintain license records for females with their previous surnames for years, so you'll want to write, even though you believe that your female subject has had a name change. Many impossible cases have been solved simply because the subject's driving record was requested. You will no doubt want to start with the last known state of the subject. Even if the subject has moved to another state, each motor vehicle department maintains a record going back from 2 years to 30 years, indicating what state the subject's license was surrendered to. When writing to request a copy of the subject's driving record, include the date of birth. If you don't have an exact date of birth for the subject, write and ask for an alpha search. Address your request to the appropriate office listed. Make sure you include a check for the search fee. And you may want to include additional funds if you feel there might be more than one listing for that name. If the Driving Record Division writes to you and says there are many individuals who have your subject's name with that year of birth, you'll want to write back and give the area of the state that you feel the subject may now reside or had resided in. If you receive several driving records and don't know which is your subject, don't despair. Driving records may contain additional information which will assist you in determining which of the licensees is your subject. Most records contain addresses, height, weight, hair color, eye color, Social Security number, date of birth, dates and locations of accidents, dates and locations of traffic tickets, and restrictions such as eyeglasses. If your subject appears to be a person that will not give proper information on any licenses or other documents, then the traffic ticket will be able to lead you to the subject's location. If your subject's driving record indicates traffic violations, take note of the jurisdiction or location that issued the ticket. Write to that authority and request a photocopy of the ticket. On the ticket will be the make, model, and license number of the vehicle. Write to the Motor Vehicle Registration Department, supplying the license plate number of the vehicle. Many times, the registration will indicate ownership of a person other than your subject. You'll now have a new address to check and a new person that may be questioned. If your subject's driving record indicates an accident, then you'll want to order a copy of the accident report. This report will contain much information such as address, vehicles involved in the accident, location of accident, and more. But use this report primarily to find out about the other party in the accident. You'll have the name, address, driver's license number, vehicle information, and other important details. If the accident report indicates that your subject was at fault, then your subject may have been sued or will be facing a court date in the near future. You'll need the other party's information and search the public records for a suit filed by this party. Pay particular attention to the subpoena the subject was served and the address they were served at. If any damages were awarded that exceed the subject's insurance coverage, then there will be numerous records indicating the liens and attachments that have been filed. You may be able to glean numerous addresses for the subject. If your subject was not at fault, then they may have filed suit. You'll want to review the files of any litigation. You can be assured that any address listed for your subject will be accurate because the subject had filed this suit with the intent of collecting damages. You may order the accident report from the jurisdiction that is noted on the driving record. The state police agencies listed will usually have a copy of every accident involving damage and injuries. If the jurisdiction on the accident report is unclear, then the state police will be able to either provide you a copy of the accident report or will evaluate the accident location and advise you exactly where to make your inquiry. After you have the subject's driving record and address, you may discover that the address is not the current one. Write to the appropriate motor vehicle department and, armed with the subject's date of birth from the driving record, request a list of all motor vehicles listed in the subject's name. Many times, the search will reveal that the subject is co-owner of a vehicle with a spouse, friend, or business associate. Motor vehicle registrations are important in the event that the address on the subject's driving record is not current. A driver's license may be renewed as infrequently as every 8 years. Motor vehicle registrations are renewed every year. Address your request to the appropriate office listed. Make sure you include a check for the search fee, and you may want to include additional funds if you feel there might be more than one vehicle registered for that name. Contact the states for their current price structure. Please note that all government agencies are constantly changing policies insofar as what access to records and files will be accorded to the public. For example, California restricts access to driving records. However, Florida will not only send you the driving record, but will give the individual's social security number. You may want to do additional research. Every state keeps a record of all transactions regarding the sale of a motor vehicle. You may want to request a body file or vehicle history of a particular motor vehicle. The information will include paperwork with the subject's signature. This may help confirm that you are on the right track. You'll also see that the history of the motor vehicle will indicate what previous addresses were contained on the yearly registrations. You may need these addresses so that you can contact the current occupants and inquire as to where your subject may have moved to. The information will include the name and address of the previous owner. This individual may have known the subject and may be able to provide you with more information. Even if the previous owner didn't know the subject, ask the individual casually if there was any mention of employment or other personal information. The subject may have had to explain to the buyer why the vehicle was being sold. There'll be many possibilities for new information regarding the location of your subject from this simple method of inquiry. If you write and request the file on a vehicle that the subject does not own anymore, this may provide new information relating to the location of the subject. The packet of information you'll receive about the sold vehicle will indicate the new owner's address. Birth records usually contain the following information: complete name, subject's exact date of birth, place of birth, name of the father and mother, age of the father and mother, occupation of the father and mother, mother's maiden name, address of the father and mother, place of birth of the father and mother. You'll need an exact name when checking the motor vehicle records. A middle name is of importance because many individuals use a middle name prominently later on, such as G. Gordon Liddy or J. Edgar Hoover. Without the exact date of birth of your subject, you'd need to order a search for a particular year or a span of several years. Now that you have the birth record, you have the exact date of birth. There's much research that can be done when you're aware of the place of birth of your subject. You may want to search for other relatives at the city of birth. You'll see elsewhere in this video a firm mentioned that does specialized computer work called the Research Is Company. They'll run on a city, state, or nationwide basis any name for a listing for a telephone number. From the birth record, you now have the complete name of the father and mother. If your subject's parents may be alive, then you can conduct a search of the motor vehicle records for their location. Birth records will usually contain the age, but not the exact date of birth of the parents. The age of the parents at the time of birth of the subject will give you an approximate year of birth. The occupations, professions, or trades of both parents may be listed on the birth certificate. You may want to check trade associations and unions if the parents had occupations that required participation or membership. You'll want to inquire if the parent is still licensed in their profession or order a record from the archives if many years have passed. Birth records will be one of the only records from which you can access the mother's maiden name. You may want to conduct a search for the family of the mother. The address of the parents at the time of birth may be different from the place of birth of your subject. You may want to check property records. The place of birth of the parents is of great value. Parents may be divorced, and a place of birth of either parent will yield a starting point for a search. In difficult cases where the subject can just not be located, we've found that contact with the family will provide information that could not have been developed independently. Death records provide the following: a person's complete name, date of death, date of birth, social security number of the deceased, place of birth of the deceased, occupation of the deceased, place of death, cause of death, name of the father and mother of the deceased, mother's maiden name, name and address of cemetery or crematory, name of physician that certified cause of death. Death records are of value because you may want to order a search to be conducted on the parent or a relative of the subject you're trying to find. From the death record, you'll get enough information to contact persons who know your subject. Order a sweep done on several years if you do not know when a parent or sibling died. Now that you have the death record, you'll see there are several avenues to explore. You may want to contact the funeral home listed on the death record. On record will be the person responsible for making and paying for the arrangement of internment. Many times this person may be your subject, or at the very least a relative that may know where your subject is. Cause of death is important because one of the most successful methods of locating a subject is through autopsy records. Check to see if a parent, sibling, or relative has died. If the cause of death is homicide, automobile accident, or industrial accident, an autopsy is performed. In many locales, the autopsy is public record. These files will provide very specific information. The medical examiner makes notes regarding who was contacted to make arrangements for disposition of the body. The full names, telephone numbers, and addresses of relatives are entered on the record. If you do not have an autopsy to review, you may want to contact the probate court. If the parent of the subject died without a will, there will be a wealth of information in the probate court files. Information in the file will contain the names, addresses, and amounts of monies of each of the persons who are recognized by the court as heirs. If your subject's whereabouts is unknown at the time the estate is distributed, there will be a note in the file under Distribution of Assets that reads, Registry of the County Probate Court will hold for John Doe, being your subject, son of decedent, all monies in escrow until whereabouts of this heir has been determined. When you see this written, search through the entire file because professional heir finders have most likely located the subject, and the release forms and other information are in the file. Marriage records will provide the following information about the bride and groom: name, address, date of birth, place of birth, previous marriage status, how last marriage ended, number of previous marriages, if divorced, where, name of person performing the ceremony, signatures of bride and groom, names of the witnesses. If you don't know if your male or female subject is married, order a search conducted for a span of several years. If there's a divorce indicated, order a copy of the divorce file. The witnesses and person who perform the ceremony may be contacted. They may know more about the bride and groom and may even know their whereabouts. Marriage records are one of the best ways to find the changes in a female name. Start with an age at which you believe the first marriage occurred. Have the first marriage searched by the maiden name. After you have that record, search the marriage records with the new name. Divorce files will yield information that is unattainable anywhere else. They contain the names and ages of the children of the subject. If the children are of age, they may be of assistance to you. The divorce file will contain a list of vehicles owned by the couple and might include the vehicle identification number. See which vehicle your subject took possession of. Even if this case is years old, this number will never change on a vehicle, so you may want to order a body history on the vehicle. If your subject does not own the vehicle anymore, the documentation will include the name of the person who purchased it. Contact that individual to get information about your subject. The divorce file will also contain a listing of property owned. You'll learn what real estate your subject retained. The mailing address for the tax bill will be public record. Boats and vessels owned will also be listed, and this too can help you find your subject. The Social Security Administration permits the public to check if a death has occurred for anyone since 1962. You can find out the Social Security number of someone through voters' registration records, driving records from certain states, and other public records, such as a summons or a child support order. The first 3 digits of a Social Security number are area numbers. These numbers will indicate what state or territory the subject resided in when they applied for their Social Security card. This may give a lead on what area the subject may be in or have returned to. The Social Security Death Master File is accessed because it is one of the most time-saving and cost-effective techniques you can use. The Social Security Administration releases a list of all persons who have died. The information that's available to the public is the Social Security number, first and last name, date of birth, date of death, zip code of exact place of death, zip code where the death payment was made. The total number of persons listed in the Master Death File is currently at 43 million. Several companies have bought the magnetic tapes that contain the Master Death File. The Master Death File can be accessed by name only, by name and date of birth, by Social Security number, by name and date of death, by first name only with date of birth. If the subject has been missing for several years, order a check of the Master Death File. If the subject does appear, order a copy of the death record. This is proof that the subject is deceased. The most important use of the Death Master File is to find a death record of a parent. If you believe that a parent of the subject has died, request a Death Master File record be run on their name. Of course, a name like John Smith will not yield good results because of the long list that'll be produced. If you have the year of birth, then the field can be narrowed down considerably. Look for the zip code that states the place of death. Order a death certificate and contact the funeral home listed. The funeral home's records will indicate the next of kin, which may be your subject. The home address and telephone number of the spouse or other family member will be contained in the records. Relatives may be queried about the location of your subject. Since you now have the place of death of the parent, you may want to contact the probate court. If the parent had died with no will, there will be a file that contains much information, including the names and addresses of all persons that were paid monies for the estate. Let's go to the Master Death File and see who we can find. Here are all the Walter Disneys that have died since 1962. The Social Security number of the highlighted Walter Disney shows that this individual applied for his number in California. This would be where you would start a search for a will. If this was the father of your subject, his will would be a good record to review. And here's proof that Elvis is dead after all. The Social Security Administration will not accept any request for death master file searches. There is a company in Miami which charges $45 for each name search. This fee covers up to 100 duplicate names. Over 100 duplicates, it's $30 per 100. As a result of numerous requests, Research Is Company has literature on products they now sell that as a viewer of You Too Can Find Anybody, you may be interested in. The items include stun guns, personal protection devices, surveillance devices, and other nifty, strange, and hard-to-obtain products. They'll send you a brochure for $1. Research Is Company offers the over 600 addresses contained in this video on labels or computer disk. They're constantly updated and may be of great convenience to you. Research Is offers files on World War II prisoners of war from both the Pacific and European theaters. If you know that your subject was a POW, then you may want to access this file, or you may want to consider accessing your subject's father's file. The search is run by name. Locating your subject's father is another technique used in your quest for the location of your subject. There are over 175,000 names listed. There is much that can be gleaned about the father because you will, in many cases, be able to obtain the father's home city, Social Security number, and marital status. Even though the information may be as much as 40 years old, you'll be able to contact relatives who may live in the hometown. They may know your subject. The World War II POW list of the Pacific and European theaters and the Korean and Vietnam conflict casualty file will all be searched for the one fee for the name you supply. You don't need to furnish a date of birth or Social Security number. The search is conducted strictly by name. The cost is $40 for a list of up to 100 persons with the same name you submit. Research Is Company has an excellent system for nationwide checks of listed telephone numbers. They charge $40 for the first 100 names and $25 for every increment of 100 names thereafter. This system is of tremendous assistance in cases where people have been missing for a period of time. Research Is Company also provides the Social Security number address update report. Research Is charges a fee of $35 and will not charge a fee for an unsuccessful search. There are a myriad of public records that can be accessed on the county level. This is a list of the types of records you will find that may contain your subject's name and address. You may search for any of these records with just the name of your subject. Voter's registration information is available upon written request. Write to the county you believe your subject may have been or is registered in. Here's an example that will clearly illustrate how easy it is to ascertain the subject's date of birth and home address. In this case, the information our researcher had was that the subject named Love lived, among other places, in Baldwin, New York at one time. He was not supplied a first name. He wrote to the Board of Elections of the county of jurisdiction for Baldwin. He sent a nominal fee of $3 because this is the average cost of requesting a voter's registration record. He then requested to be sent the voter's registration information of every person named Love in Baldwin. Fortunately, the request was for an unusual name. The response received stated that the potential subject, Love, did not live in Baldwin and had moved in 1985. The potential subject's new address was 140 Larch Street, Wantagh, New York, and included the date of birth of the potential subject. Since our researcher was aware that the subject had been in a serious accident on a certain date and at a certain location, he ordered this potential subject's driving record. The accident date and location that was supplied matched what was listed on the driving record. To be able to write one letter and be provided with a full name for the subject makes this one of the best searching techniques. Your subject may own a business but did not want to incorporate. Your subject would be required to apply for a fictitious name if they wanted to open a business account at a bank. He could have a house painting, landscaping, accounting, hot dog vending cart, or any type of business, and they'll have filed a fictitious name with the county. The application on file will provide you with home and business addresses. Write to the county asking that a search be conducted. Provide the subject's full name and the years you want searched. Many counties require that a person who has any type of independent business apply for an occupational or vendor's license. You may want to request a search be done by address or company name if you have this information. The subject may not be listed if you order the search to be conducted by name, because the subject could have changed their name by just a few letters or assumed a whole new identity. Persons that arrange many details of their lives to avoid being found will overlook the fact that the license they had issued for their pet is a public record. Write to the county you believe your subject resides in for a list of all pet licenses issued in your subject's name. The tax collector will have an alphabetical listing of all persons that paid property tax. Request that a search be conducted and specify the years. Tax records go back in time longer than any other record. Review of the tax bill may show that the address it's being sent to is out of state or in another country. Question the present owners of any property your subject had owned at one time. He still may hold a mortgage on the property. If your subject had a case filed in small claims court, you'll want to order the complete file. The file will contain the address of the subject and any witnesses the subject subpoenaed to court. You may want to review the subpoena the subject was served if he had been a defendant in the case. The subpoena will have noted the address the subject had been served at, which might differ. When someone has a case decided in their favor in small claims court, there may be a lien against property. If your subject had been at fault in an automobile accident, find out in what county the accident occurred. Write to that county once a month, and eventually a suit may be filed, naming your subject as the defendant. If an action is filed, you'll want to order the file. Pay special attention to any filing that involves your subject that is listed as power of attorney. You'll want to know the person's name that your subject gave power of attorney to. Persons that are trying to avoid detection will often give power of attorney to a family member or close friend. The state licenses many professions, trades, and crafts. Write to the Secretary of State and submit your subject's name to be searched for any licensure by the state. If your subject is licensed by the state, you'll be able to receive valuable information from the licensing board. The most important information will be the address, but take special note of any complaints filed. A court or hearing date may be scheduled in the near future. There are over 3,500 colleges and universities in the United States. If you're aware of the institution of higher learning that your subject had attended, then inquiring about directory information may yield much information. You may contact the Alumni Association and you'll receive information regarding former students. The date of birth and place of birth is of obvious value. You now have an exact date of birth that can be utilized to access the driving record of the subject. Even though years have passed, you might want to try calling the telephone numbers listed. In many instances, these numbers will still be good numbers that will enable you to contact the family. Even if your subject is trying to avoid detection, the subject will still want to be issued a license for hunting or fishing if this is their sport. Write to the state and submit a request asking that an alpha search be conducted on your subject so that you may ascertain if they do have a hunting or fishing license. If you're successful with your inquiry, you'll receive the subject's current address, date of birth, and the current status of the license. If the license has been expired for some time, then you'll want to use the date of birth that you received and order the subject's driving record. Under the Freedom of Information Act, you're permitted access to the following information about military personnel: full name, rank, gross salary, past duty assignments, present duty assignments, office or duty telephone number, awards and decorations, attendance at military schools. The most important information is the present duty assignment of your subject. The Military Locator Services will supply you with the current unit number and installation to which a person on active duty is assigned. If the person is retired, a letter will be forwarded to them. The Salvation Army also has a very competent and experienced Missing Persons Bureau. They'll conduct a search for you to find a father, mother, brother, sister, son, or daughter. The fee is just $10. The Department of Veterans Affairs will also forward a letter from you to a veteran. There's no charge for this service. If you want to contact your subject because of a paternity or child support matter, then you may use the Armed Services Community and Family Support. If your subject is a current or retired civil servant, write to the Office of Personnel Management. You'll get the worksite address of an employee, or if the subject is retired, forward a letter from you. If your subject was a railroad worker that may be collecting benefits, then write to the Railroad Retirement Board and request that they forward a letter to the subject. The U.S. Public Health Service will forward a letter from you if the person is retired. If your subject is employed, you'll be supplied with grade and salary, address, and date of employment. Here are some additional sources you might want to utilize in your search. If your subject is a pilot or owns an aircraft, write to the Federal Aviation Administration. A search will be conducted by name. If your subject is in the transportation business, there'll be records with the Interstate Commerce Commission. When searching for a subject that was a minor when they were taken and hidden by an adult, you may want to explore passport records. If you discover that the person who had taken the minor has died, write for the passport records of the deceased. These records will contain the information that was on the passport application, personal data about the deceased, including addresses and references. The person listed to contact in case of emergency may be the person that now has possession of your subject. You may request the release of documents in the custody of the Department of State at the address shown earlier. You may need a passport if your subject is abroad. Here's a complete list of all passport agencies. You may also apply at many post offices and state and federal courts. The United States Court of Military Appeals is independent of any influence from the military. You'll want to order a photocopy of your subject's complete court file if they've ever availed themselves of this avenue of redress. The date of birth, social security number, grade and rank information, addresses, and the details of the court case will be part of the file. Your subject may be a veteran of the armed forces that have made an appeal to the United States Court of Veterans' Appeals. Cases are filed in some cases decades after the veteran had been separated from the service. Social security number, date of birth, and home address will be in this public record. The United States Claims Court may have been used by your subject to make a claim against the federal government. Write to the tax court for a photocopy of the court file if you believe your subject may have had a case heard in this arena. If your subject is a business person that conducts business with the federal government, then you'll want to request photocopies of the files and contracts. Many times you'll need the telephone number and address of an agency of the federal government that may employ your subject. You'll want to check employment status with the least amount of delay. These toll-free telephone numbers are of great assistance. The operators that staff these centers have access to every telephone number and address in the federal government. So even if the agency is obscure, this number will be able to satisfy your inquiry. You may obtain a forwarding address for your subject by paying the Postal Service a $1 fee. United States government depository libraries will receive all federal government publications free of charge if they pledge to make available free access to their facilities for all library patrons. These libraries have on-hand crisscross directories. These directories can be accessed two ways. The listings are by telephone number. Look for a phone number in the numerical listing, and it will show the name and address of that person. The listings are by address. You may look up a street address, and you'll be shown the name of the occupant and the telephone number corresponding to the address. The library will have a publication called Directory of United States Public and Private Companies. You'll want to review this reference if you believe you're subject to be an owner of a business. The Congressional Directory lists the names, addresses, and telephone numbers of members of Congress. It contains the names, addresses, and phone numbers of every Freedom of Information officer in every agency of the federal government. You can ask if your subject is an employee of the government by directing your inquiry to the appropriate Freedom of Information officer. Ask for the Gale Research Edition of organizations, and you'll have over 47,000 entries of unions, trade organizations, and clubs. The International Edition lists over 10,300 entries. The book version of You Too Can Find Anybody contains the addresses of all United States depository libraries. When a search does not reveal a driver's license, vehicle or boat registration, a license for one of the over 100 professions that require licensing by the state, a military record, evidence that the subject has died, or any of the other facets of a normal paper trail, turn to the Workers' Compensation Bureau. Persons who receive benefits from the Workers' Compensation Bureau are those who have suffered injuries during the performance of their jobs. Many cases require that the person not engage in any employment, restrict activity outside the home, or not perform routine functions such as driving an automobile, thus the reason for a dearth of records. Many states will provide a complete file which may yield information including addresses and previous employers and dependents. It's important to remember that states may change their policies on releasing compensation information. Many states, including California, Florida, and New Jersey, consider workers' compensation files public records, whereas several states will not release information. Write and inquire about the current policy using the addresses shown on your screen. A person is listed in corporation records because they're an officer, director, or registered agent. Since organizations, clubs, teams, churches, and associations require incorporation many times, your subject doesn't have to be a business person to have an involvement in a corporation. Write to the Corporation Division, and most states will be able to provide a list of all persons with a particular name, the names of the corporations they're associated with, and the addresses of the corporations. Many times, the home addresses will be listed for officers and directors in smaller corporations such as those mentioned. The Corporation Division will also conduct a search that will generate a list of all persons with a particular name who have a Uniform Commercial Code transaction. The UCC, in most states, is a transaction that's intended to create a security interest in personal property or fixtures including goods, documents, instruments, general intangibles, chattel paper, and a contract that creates a security interest in a chattel trust, trust deed, equipment trust, conditional sale, trust receipt, and lease or consignment intended as security. If your subject has, for example, ever lent money or equipment to someone who's opened a business or has borrowed money or equipment, then they would be listed in UCC transactions. When you isolate your subject on the UCC list, you'll want to order a complete photocopy of the transaction. This will show the business and/or home address of the subject, the names of any witnesses, the name of the business, and the name of the other party to the transaction. If you're searching for a subject that disappeared abruptly years ago, then the abandoned property files will be a source for you to explore. The state takes possession of the following if a person has disappeared for, in most states, at least 7 years: bank accounts, state income tax refunds, payroll checks, overpayment of insurance premiums, credit balance on credit cards, utility refunds, dividend checks, annuity checks, telephone deposit refunds, safe deposit box. Each state maintains an alphabetical listing of all persons that have had property or monies held in escrow by the state. Write to any state where your subject may have lived or had conducted any business in. If your subject is listed and is due any significant amount of property or monies, you can be assured that companies which find persons listed in the abandoned property list are searching for your subject. These companies assess the person found a percentage, usually 30%, of the money that's held in escrow. You may check periodically with the state that has your subject listed to see if a research company has located the subject, or you can request that the state check the refund file that indicates if a person had been due property or monies and were located. The address that the state sent the record to is public information. If you have reason to believe your subject has ever filed for bankruptcy or will file for bankruptcy, then this is an excellent source. Bankruptcy records are public information. The petition file will contain the subject's social security number, date of birth, current and former addresses, bank accounts, stock ownership, employment history including a list of the salaries and fringe benefits earned for the past several years, a list of all property including vehicles and other important financial and personal information. The vehicle identification number of each vehicle listed in the file will be shown. You may access the current address by writing to the appropriate motor vehicle department. Property that the subject will retain because it qualifies as exempt from the bankruptcy will be listed. This property may provide another lead in your search for the subject because the address of property will be listed. Chapter 7 is commonly known as liquidation bankruptcy, and any person or business may file. Chapter 11 is a reorganization of debt. Chapter 13 is an adjustment of debts for a wage earner. This option is available to individuals with a regular income and who have fixed unsecured debts less than $100,000 and secured debts of less than $350,000. Write to the bankruptcy court you feel that your subject may have filed in. If your subject does have a bankruptcy file, then review the file completely, and you'll be provided with much information that will assist in your search. You may be able to use the government to conduct a search for you without charge. If an individual has a child support order against a subject, with the subject's name and social security number, the Federal Parent Locator Service can search for a current address in the records of the Department of Defense, the National Personnel Records Center, the Social Security Administration, and the Veterans Administration. The Federal Parent Locator Service is a service operated by the Office of Child Support Enforcement within the United States Department of Health and Human Services to assist the individual states in locating people for the purpose of obtaining child support payments. This agency is also used in cases of parental kidnapping related to custody and visitation cases. The first step in seeking the location of a subject that has an obligation to pay child support is to contact your state's Child Support Enforcement Office. They will first use the State Parent Locator Service. This service, free of charge, will check the records of other state agencies such as motor vehicle registration, unemployment insurance, state income tax, and correctional facilities. If the subject has moved to another state, the Federal Parent Support Service will be contacted. The Internal Revenue Service, in conjunction with state and federal child enforcement agencies, will disclose information from the tax return of the subject to the Child Support Office, which will be of assistance in finding the subject and determining the subject's financial condition.
The registration of a boat or vessel is a source that is often overlooked, but can produce the same desired results as other more commonly used public records. Request an alpha search if you don't have the subject's date of birth. If your subject will be difficult to find and does not have a boat or vessel registration, then you may want to order the boat registration of a relative. You'll then be able to contact the relative and query them on the location of your subject. The registration will contain the address, date of birth, and the identification number of the boat or vessel. You'll be able to order a vessel history and apply the same techniques that are used when accessing vehicle histories. The National Archives makes available for reference and research the well-known valuable records of the U.S. government, such as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, as well as 3 billion textual documents, 2 million cartographic items, 5 million still photographs, 9 million aerial photographs, 91 million feet of motion picture film, and 122,000 video and sound recordings. The agency operates 14 record centers, 11 field branches, and 8 presidential libraries in 15 states. The National Archives has custody of millions of records relating to persons who have had dealings with the federal government. These records are deposited in the National Archives facilities in the Washington, D.C. area and in the 11 National Archives regional archives. Many records have been microfilmed, with copies available for research use at more than one facility. Photocopies of most of the records can be supplied for a moderate fee per page. If you're unable to come to the National Archives, you may hire someone to do research for you. Within the National Archives, there are many records relating to Indians and their tribal affiliation. The original records are in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. These records often contain information about specific tribal members. They include the following. Lists of Indian tribes include Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Creek. Annuity payrolls showing the name, age, and sex of each person who received payment, and annual census rolls. Land records in the National Archives include bounty land warrant files, donation land entry files, homestead application files, and private land claim files. Naturalization records generally show for each person who petitioned for naturalization name, age, date of birth, nationality, and whether citizenship was granted. The 11 regional archives hold original records of naturalizations filed in most of the federal courts in their regions. The Immigration and Naturalization Service has duplicate records of all naturalizations that occurred after September 26, 1906. When records are not available in the National Archives, inquiries should be sent to the INS on a form that can be obtained from any of the service's district offices. Local postmasters will give the address of the nearest INS district office. The National Archives series of customs passenger lists and immigration passenger lists of ship arriving from abroad at many Atlantic, Pacific, and Gulf Coast ports. There are also arrival records for immigration via Canada. A customs passenger list normally contains the following information for each passenger: name, age, sex, and occupation, the country of embarkation, and the country of destination. Microfilm copies of available passenger lists earlier than 1955 can be used in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. The National Archives in Washington, D.C. has passport applications and related papers. The name of the person who applied and the place and approximate date of application should be supplied. Request for information from passport records should be addressed to the Passport Office, Department of State, Washington, D.C. 20520. There are records in the National Archives in Washington, D.C. relating to civilian employees of the federal government whose service ended before 1940. These records contain information about the date and place of birth of an employee. The personnel records for most civilian employees whose service terminated after 1940 are in Civilian Personnel Records, 111 Winnebago Street, St. Louis, Missouri, 63118. The National Archives has applications of seamen on U.S. vessels for protection certificate or certificates of U.S. citizenship. Such applications are usually supported by evidence of the date and place of birth and of the citizenship of the seaman. Personnel and card records for civilians formerly employed by the Revenue Cutter Service, Life-Saving Service, and Lighthouse Service are on file at the National Personnel Records Center, Civilian Personnel Records. Civilian employment records are subject to Office of Personnel Management regulations governing the release of information from federal employees' personnel records. Information furnished is limited to names, position titles, grades, salaries, and duty stations. Inquiries, with as much identification as possible, should be submitted to Civilian Personnel Records in St. Louis. The National Archives has records of births and marriages of U.S. citizens abroad registered at foreign service posts. Birth and marriage records extend through 1941, and reports of deaths extend through 1949. Request for information should be addressed to the Department of State, Washington, D.C. 20520. Direct any inquiries to the Director, National Archives, at the addresses listed. The National Cemetery System is a source that is not used to its full potential by finders of missing persons. The National Cemetery System was created in 1862, and 12 cemeteries were established. In 1933, an executive order authorized the transfer of national cemeteries to the National Park Service, Department of the Interior. In June 1973, the national cemeteries were transferred to the Veterans Administration. Within the Veterans Administration, the National Cemetery System is the responsibility of the Department of Memorial Affairs. Use the National Cemetery System to find dependents of the subject. If your subject was in the Armed Forces, the Reserves, or a member of the Public Health Service, they may have dependents who are buried in one of the national cemeteries. If your inquiry indicates that your subject, who may be on active status but more likely a veteran for our purposes here, has a family member buried, you want to write and ask for the records of interment. This will yield information about your subject, including date of birth, Social Security number, and addresses. A current address is usually available from these records. The birth certificate of your subject would be one avenue to explore in your search for information, but you may want to order the birth records of your subject's children. These particular records will give you the exact date of birth, place of birth, and other vital statistics so that you may find the children who may know the whereabouts of the subject. Contact the physician listed on the birth record for additional information about the location of your subject or the subject's family. You'll be requesting death certificates on persons other than your subject. The reason for this is in order to find a person who has not left much of a paper trail, the best way of finding the subject's current location is to locate the subject's family and make inquiries. Every death record will have a physician's name certifying the cause of death. Many times, the family physician will be the official who attests to the cause of death. This physician may be of some assistance in locating your subject. These addresses will assist you in locating the physician because, like many other records you'll encounter, years have passed since the date of the issuance of the document. Contact the appropriate medical board and they'll give you the current address of the medical practitioner. This list of bar associations will be of assistance because you'll retrieve records such as divorce, foreclosures, and other legal instruments that have an attorney's name on them. Many of the records will be decades old. You can contact the Bar Association and they'll give you the current address and telephone number of the attorney. Explain to the attorney what you're doing and who you're seeking. He or she may be able to provide information heretofore unknown to you. If you discover that the missing person may be in a particular country, request assistance from the closest embassy or consulate. Here are just a few listings of foreign embassies. The book version of You Too Can Find Anybody contains a complete list for your reference.